I really just wanted to use this video as an opportunity to talk about live service games as a whole, not particularly Marathon, but I just, after experiencing Marathon recently, I felt like it was the perfect time to talk about this thing. It's just been kind of festering in my head for a while. And it's really about the selfishness of players, or the perceived selfishness of players by devs. I'm not going to go into the whole selfishness or greed of companies. There's literally hundreds of channels that have already done that, so I just don't really want to get into that discussion. And also, don't take this video as some sort of definitive reasoning or fact or anything. It's much more close to my thought process and a thought experiment, as I've done no actual research on this, and I'm just talking and just speaking my mind on this topic. And honestly, there's not going to be anything really interesting in this video in terms of gameplay footage, so you can just tune it out and just, I guess, hear me talk and ramble about live service games and players possibly being selfish when it comes to the live service games they play. And so I wrote a couple of things down of topics that I wanted to discuss, and the first one is a really big one amongst most live service, hardcore live service players, is the infamous sunk cost fallacy. Casuals, they feel the base content level with a game at its base progression is generally okay in a lot of live service games, because they're significantly less invested into the game than, say, a person with over 200 plus hours in a live service game. I mean, I genuinely cannot remember the last live service game to release recently that went more than a few months without an update and still contained the majority of its player base. That's unheard of. That's the kind of treatment that is usually more acceptable with long-standing live service games like Counter-Strike or World of Warcraft. Games that have been around forever and are easy on the casual side of players, but they're also deep enough for hardcore players to keep coming back to, regardless of update cadence and stuff like that. And this effect compounded with the whole sunk cost fallacy that a lot of long-standing casual and even hardcore players tend to feel with games like that, is why those games tend to have a much more, I guess, content player base. Or maybe that's not the right word. Maybe tolerant is the right word. Nowadays, to build up a massive live service player base, you really have to go all in and go extremely hard right from the start, like a game such as Arc Raiders, and then continuously update the game with even bigger and more massive, amazing updates, basically really consistently. And a lot of studios who don't experience that instant big hit success like Arc Raiders did, they simply don't have the output in order to, to reach player standards in that way. Whereas, games back then, they could slowly trickle up and increase their content cadence over time and gradually build up their player base over time, and they had the luxury to do so. Nowadays, if you don't have an instant banger and basically everyone is flocking to your game, you really just don't have that luxury. And part of this is because of the amount of live events and limited time modes and all that stuff. I'll get to that a little bit later, but a lot of this is because of the saturation of live service games on the market right now, and because there's always something to do in a different game, so you have to be able to hold people's attention for more than a couple of weeks. And the next point I have here is the competitive social status that comes with a lot of live service games. To be fair, this is less indicative of extraction shooters such as Marathon and more of live service games in general, because say you're one of a few players to reach Cantina and Arc Raiders, right? And you have the cosmetics to show that end game. All of a sudden, there's a sense of pride that comes with, pushing the game to its absolute limits to be among the top 0.1% of players in the player base. And with that pride comes the expectations to further be able to earn and show your prowess in the game with special limited time events and rewards and stuff like that. Why this point in particular becomes a problem is because although you may wow a few players at first for basically being one of the, I guess, quote unquote best players in the world on a certain game, that effect wears off relatively quickly. Remember, this is a live service game you're usually talking about. What's cool or impressive, today or something, it's just mildly impressive usually in a week's time, right? Because stuff, it comes and goes in live service games. Nothing really lasts in a live service game like that. It's not your gear, not your rank, not your prestige. None of that really means anything after, the season reset or something. It all will literally mean nothing in 2 weeks. And so the need to rinse and repeat that process while keeping it fresh is something that these games have to figure out for their very dedicated players. Also, that's another reason you might feel greedy with, I don't know, getting a really big update every month or another, really large scale event. The grind is never really expected to stop in these games. And so updates and events are expected to keep pace with that in order to maintain players' needs. Also, another really key aspect I wanted to bring up was the marketing for a lot of live service games. And this one point can be its own separate video that would probably take 15 to 20 minutes to just ramble through. So instead, I'll just provide the bullet points and why both sides of being either really greedy or being content with a game are often a direct result of the pre-launch marketing for a lot of these games. When a company releases a product in a very oversaturated market or even a very competitive market, the one thing they want more than finding an audience is to stand apart from their peers in some tangible way that will initially turn heads towards their product. And I'm sure you've seen this over the last 5 years with live service games such as Foam Stars, Concord, Highguard. Was Redfall a live service game? I'm not sure, but there's Redfall, there's Babylon's Fall, Skull and Bones, just even more that I can't really list off the top of my head right now. But these games out there had a recipe of a very familiar concept already created within the gaming industry with their own unique, twist or spin to it. And as they unfortunately found out, a familiar concept with just a twist or a spin to it is another live service game's massive midlife update. And it doesn't actually attract players past the initial interest period when it launches. And what this can do is it can cause players to have a higher expectation for newer released live service games because they see right through the blatant lack of originality shown through marketing that's just masked as something that's fresh and different. Whereas if the game is shown and revealed to be literally just a spin-off of an already existing product on the market, but it has the right timing when players are craving the said product, then you get something like, Marvel Rivals. And although that is the exception to the whole redundancy of, live service hill shooters, it is still proof that the concept still works. But the timing, the execution, and the marketing have to show something the players want, or they have been left wanting for some time, and they're very greedy for it again. That's the only way that it works in this particular instance. If something is still redundant, it still has a spot in the market as long as players are still wanting for that, and as long as you still offer a pretty good live service package at the right time. You have to get all the stuff right all at once to basically succeed. And on to the other really big M of live service games, which is monetization. With monetization, if a game has a fairly deep cosmetic earn system that allows you to get most, if not all of the game's cosmetics for free, and that includes something that would be considered premium cosmetics, then players are more often to be forgiving about, content scarcity. But in that same vein, being too rewarding with cosmetic acquisition through gameplay usually leads to players expecting an unrealistic abundance of rewards and even less grind to counterbalance the players who would usually just spend money to bypass that requirement. And this is something that's been a problem with so many live service games, I've lost count. In a perfect world, a company would provide equal opportunity to gain cosmetics and in-game items freely, while also incentivizing players who are willing to spend extra cash to get that thing that they want right away. Now, I know this has been a widely debated topic, but the important thing to remember here is that game studios don't want to alienate anyone through microtransactions or other forms of monetization. Well, I should say most studios. Some genuinely do not give a damn, but they will end up doing that regardless of they want to or not. Something important to remember is that games are still a business at the end of the day. No matter how much you might dislike it, they are still a business at the end of the day. And so whichever group of players feel this way, whether it's the earn cosmetics group or the purchase cosmetics group, one of these group of people will be left wanting more, and they'll feel like the content offering is nerfed in their direction to appease the other side of the player base, which is another reason that players can feel very selfish or greedy about the live service games they play, is if they feel like there's not enough content offering for how they like to engage with their games, either on the free gameplay side, or if it's just the cash store side. You know what, while I'm on the topic of cosmetics and in-game items, let me talk about something that players really don't like about a lot of live service games and extraction shooters in particular, even though this is exactly how they work, is the whole loss aversion thing. This is the most integral part of extraction shooters, so it does have a heavy impact on Marathon in particular. But when players experience stuff seasonal resets of rank, or they get their gear taken away, which is very common for extraction shooters, or they have limited time modes or special events that they really love stripped away. And I'm looking at you, Apex Legends, damn, they can't keep one mode in the game for more than 2 months. It's honestly ridiculous. That's why I don't play Apex Legends. But these players begin to feel all of a sudden the game is a lot less dense. It has a lot less content and stuff to do, which is actually true, and it's kind of the point. But it does leave them feel like they want more, and they want more new events, they want more new challenges. They constantly want more because there's just constant FOMO. It's not healthy, in my opinion, for a game to launch and instantly already off the bat have a lot of FOMO events. It starts to alienate players who feel like they don't have enough time. Maybe they have a full-time job and they only have 2 or 3 hours to play a week, and you have this limited time mode and they only played one game but they really liked it, but now it's out of the game. It's something that players really dislike about games, is the whole loss aversion to it. Now, in most games with really popular limited time modes, they end up coming back after a little bit, but that wait time is made worse by the fact that they have to regrind for the same gear or prestige or rank to get back to that really enjoyable experience that they had before usually. And if you're one of those type of players who are going like, you know, not me, I love regrinding, I love constantly getting back up my rank and stuff like that every season, then I don't know what to say. Here's a cookie, bro, because most casual players are genuinely not like that. Like, most of them want to keep their progress that they made. They want to keep their gear, their loot that they gained. You know, they hate losing stuff and then being asked to go out and go get it all over again. Or they hate being told, hey, come back in like 3 to 4 months when this mode you really loved returns. And, you know, that kind of stuff, it breeds this sort of contempt from these players. They feel like these games are just toying with them, taking stuff away, putting it back in the game. They want these stuff to be constantly in the game. When there's a limited time mode, then it just stays in the game for a couple of weeks, and players really dig it. They dig the progression of it. They dig the gameplay systems. I don't understand why companies take that away. There's literally almost no benefit to doing that, and I don't understand it. And is what makes a lot of players feel like these games lack any real amount of content, is that they feel like FOMO is like the key to getting player retention back, and that's just not the case. That's not how people work. They want consistency, and they want a content pipeline of, you know, extra content. My next point is a whole like personal, or like the whole identity thing, or like attachment to live service games that some people get. And this one is really weird because I've taken notice of it recently, like while browsing a lot of communities within live service games in the last, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 years. And it's been a thing for way more than 5 years. But like, I would say like after COVID, it got really, really extreme. People will take maybe, I don't know, a character from a live service game, or a faction, or a certain class, or race, or playstyle, or whatever, and they basically make that their whole persona or their like personality online. And because they have that, they feel like they have some sort of say in like what direction the game takes, and it's usually in order to benefit their really small niche within the particular community of this game. And I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but let me just give you an example. Say a live service game adds a special, I don't know, like passive bonus to all of the healers in this particular game, and it's in this like massive update, and basically all healers got buffed. Well, guess what? Everyone who's like, oh, I'm the tank guy, you know, like that's my whole personality, I play only tank characters in this game, they feel like the update didn't have content that they could then use, and so they feel like they're just left out. And this is one of the things I don't get about live service games and players in general, is that they try to find this niche, or there's like one play style, or this one way to play this one character, this one like little identity within a live service game, and then they ride that out, and then they get upset whenever, you know, there's updates or there's things that are added to the game that doesn't directly benefit them. But it is something that is genuinely like, it's something that devs have to consider. Like, this is how like a lot of players genuinely like to play a lot of live service games. I say it almost in every video I talk about live service games: variety, variety, variety. Do as much variety as you can in every live service game, so that you're almost never feeling left out, or you're feeling like there's not enough content or stuff for you to do. But that leads me to my last point in this video for why gamers might be greedy or selfish for the live service games that they want to play, and it's the whole streamer epidemic. And it's the reason why I left this at the end of the video, because it can get kind of toxic. I absolutely can't stand this, because they definitely have a massive effect on how live service games perform on a large scale, despite what people might tell you. But usually I find that a lot of the opinions and takes of many streamers are almost never fully in the benefit of the game's best interest, and more oftentimes it's in their best interest. And so what a lot of these streamers would do is they'll criticize the game for something with an obvious like inherent bias to what they actually want the game to be like, for either viewership or content opportunities or whatever, and they'll disguise it as like a genuine and unbiased criticism of the game itself. And a lot of them, they might actually genuinely feel that way, that they're providing actual criticism for the game regardless of how they feel about it. But more times than not, that's just not actually the case in my opinion. This would usually be fine for these creators to voice their opinion in the way that they have, if it wasn't for a lot of these brain dead morons who just take their favorite streamer's word as gospel and truth. And unfortunately, there are a lot of morons out there, and they make up the masses for a lot of these live service games that come out. And it's one of the downsides of live service games. These companies, they have to take a lot of this feedback seriously, and it genuinely, like, sometimes is to the detriment of the game. I'm sure we all know a live service game out there where streamers essentially ruined it. Like, we all like to say like, oh, streamers alone can't ruin the game. I mean, come on, like let's stop lying. If all the biggest streamers in the world basically say the same thing about what they don't like about a game, and then all their fans say something that they don't like about the game, but then the main core community of this said live service game are like, no, this is how the game actually should be played, who are they gonna listen to? Let's pull off the cover of BS and get real. Who are the devs gonna listen to? They're obviously going to listen to the streamers and their massive fan bases with the majority of the audience that they can bring to the game. So this is just how live service games are now. And like I said, games are a business. So although devs should be faithful to like their actual premise or how the game should actually be played, I mean, they still got to make money. And they still got to attract players to their game in order to make money. But yeah, with all that being said, this is really just a, what I want to call this, maybe like a thought-provoking kind of like conversation I wanted to have, and just sort of like spew and ramble and get my thoughts out there on this whole, like gamers possibly being really, really selfish or really greedy in how they're constantly wanting for more and more and more. Even with Embark, they just can't keep up with a lot of the players, like expectations and wants. If you're playing a game like super hardcore, like 30 plus hours a week, they just can't keep up with some of these players. They can't do it. But yeah, let me know what y'all think down below. We can have a whole discussion about this, because again, this is just me rambling, but I've been very interested on this topic about basically all things live service games. I'm so fascinated by live service games, whether it's failures, successes, and everything in between. It's just they've become really interesting to think about and talk about and discuss. So yeah, let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. And anyways, that's it for me. I'll see you next time.